My name is Gloria, and at 28 years old, I never imagined I'd be standing in a divorce court alive and grateful for it. Just 1 year ago, I thought I had married my soulmate, but some anniversary gifts reveal more than others. When Marcus drove me to Silver Falls for our first anniversary, I expected champagne and roses. Instead, I got 2 hands on my back and a 50-foot drop into icy water. What he didn't expect was that I'd survive to tell this story. Before I share what really happened that day at Silver Falls, tell me where you're watching from. And please subscribe if you believe everyone deserves to know the truth about who they married. Now let me take you back to when I still believed in fairy tales. I met Marcus at a charity fundraiser in downtown Denver on a Thursday evening in September. The event was for children's literacy, something close to my heart since I'd grown up in foster care before my grandmother took me in. Marcus approached me near the silent auction table, his confident stride catching my attention before his words did. "You've been outbidding everyone on that art piece for the last hour," he said with a smile that seemed practiced but charming. "Either you really love abstract art, or you really believe in this cause." "Both," I replied, trying to match his confidence. "Plus, the artist is a friend from college." That was the beginning. Marcus was everything I thought I wanted at 27. He was a successful real estate developer with properties across Colorado. He drove a Tesla, wore tailored suits, and knew the owner of every upscale restaurant in Denver. Our first date was at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city lights. He ordered wine without looking at the price and told me stories about his humanitarian trips to Guatemala to build schools. The romance moved fast, faster than anything I'd experienced before. Within 2 weeks, we were exclusive. Within a month, he was introducing me to his business partners as his girlfriend. He would surprise me at my graphic design studio with lunch from expensive restaurants. He'd send flowers to my apartment twice a week, with notes that said things like, "Just because you deserve beauty in your life, and counting the hours until I see you again." My best friend Jennifer was the first to express concern. We were having coffee at our usual spot in Capitol Hill when she brought it up. "Don't you think this is all moving a bit fast?" she asked, stirring her latte slowly. "You've known him for what, 6 weeks?" "When you know," I said, repeating what Marcus had told me the night before. "He's different, Jen. He actually sees me." "I just want you to be careful," she said. "Something about him seems too perfect. Nobody is that perfect." I dismissed her concerns as jealousy. Jennifer had been single for 2 years after a bad breakup. I thought she was projecting her fears onto my happiness. When I told Marcus about her comments, he wrapped his arms around me and said, "Some people can't stand to see others happy. Maybe you need to reconsider that friendship." That should have been my first real warning sign, but I was already in too deep to see it. 3 months into our relationship, Marcus started asking about my finances. It came up casually at first. We were planning a weekend trip to Aspen when he mentioned, "If we're going to build a future together, we should be open about everything, including money." I told him about my inheritance from my grandmother. She had passed away 2 years earlier, leaving me $500,000 and her small jewelry collection. I'd used some of it to start my graphic design business and kept the rest invested for the future. His eyes lit up in a way that I now recognize as greed, but at the time I thought it was pride in my financial responsibility. "That's amazing," he said, pulling me closer. "You're beautiful, talented, and smart with money. I hit the jackpot with you." The proposal came after 6 months on Valentine's Day. He took me to the restaurant where we'd had our first date. The entire rooftop was decorated with white roses and fairy lights. A string quartet played in the corner. He got down on one knee as the sun set behind the mountains, offering a 3-carat diamond ring that must have cost a fortune. "Gloria, you've changed my life in ways I never imagined," he said, his voice carrying across the rooftop. I want to wake up next to you every day for the rest of my life. Will you marry me?" I said yes without hesitation. The restaurant erupted in applause from other diners he'd apparently invited to witness the moment. Champagne appeared at every table. It was perfect, too perfect. But I was too swept up in the romance to question it. My parents lived in Florida, and when I called them with the news, their reaction was lukewarm. "6 months seems awfully fast, sweetheart," my mother said carefully. "What's the rush? When you're our age and you know what you want, why wait?" I answered, echoing Marcus's words again. "We just want you to be happy and safe," my father added. "Maybe we could fly out and spend some time with him before the wedding." But every time my parents tried to visit Marcus, had a convenient business emergency. When they finally met him a month before the wedding, he was charming but distant. Later, my mother pulled me aside. "There's something about his eyes," she said quietly. "They don't match his smile." I accused her of trying to ruin my happiness. We barely spoke for the rest of their visit. Wedding planning consumed the next few months. Marcus insisted on joint bank accounts to start our marriage with complete trust. He said separate finances were for couples who expected to fail. I transferred most of my inheritance into our joint account, keeping only $50,000 in my personal savings. He also suggested I sell my condo. "Why do we need two places?" he reasoned. "My house is bigger in a better neighborhood and paid off. We can invest the money from your condo into our future." The logic seemed sound. His house in Cherry Creek was worth over $1 million. My small condo in Aurora would barely cover the cost of our wedding. I listed it 2 weeks after our engagement, and it sold within days. Our wedding was everything a girl was supposed to dream about. We married at a vineyard in Napa Valley with 200 guests. My dress cost $15,000, which Marcus insisted on because his wife deserved the best. The ceremony was beautiful, the reception was lavish, and the honeymoon in Bora Bora was paradise. But paradise never lasts. The first few months of marriage seemed normal on the surface. Marcus was attentive and loving in public, but at home things were different. He started monitoring my schedule, always wanting to know where I was and who I was with. When I had client meetings, he would call multiple times to check in. If I didn't answer immediately, he would show up at my studio. "I just worry about you," he would say. "The world is dangerous for beautiful women. I'm just protecting what's mine." The way he said "mine" should have terrified me, but I rationalized it as protectiveness. Jennifer and I grew distant after Marcus told me she had made a pass at him at our wedding. When I confronted her, she was shocked. "Gloria, I would never do that," she said, tears in her eyes. "I barely spoke to him at the wedding. He's lying to you." I chose to believe my husband. Jennifer and I stopped speaking after that. Another support system successfully eliminated. 6 months into our marriage, I discovered the truth about Marcus's finances. I came home early from a cancelled client meeting to find him in his office on the phone with someone who was clearly threatening him. "I'll have your money," he was saying, his voice desperate. "I just need another month. The deal is about to close." When he saw me, he quickly ended the call. His face was pale sweat beading on his forehead. "What's going on?" I asked. That's when he confessed about the gambling. He owed $80,000 to some business associates from poker games that had gotten out of hand. He promised it was a one-time mistake, swore he would never gamble again if I helped him this once. "I'll lose everything if I don't pay them," he said, actually crying. "My business, our house, everything. Please, Gloria, you're the only one who can save me." I paid his debts the next day, transferring money from our joint account. He was grateful, promising to make it up to me. He suggested we take a special trip for our first anniversary to restart our marriage fresh. "I'll plan everything," he said, holding me tight. It will be perfect, just like you deserve. I believed him. I wanted to believe that paying off his debts would fix everything, that we could go back to those early days when everything seemed perfect. I was wrong about so many things, but most of all, I was wrong to trust him with my life. The morning of our first anniversary arrived with Marcus more attentive than he'd been in months. I woke to find him already awake, watching me with what seemed like affection, but now I recognize as calculation. "Happy anniversary, my love," he said, kissing my forehead. "I have a surprise for you." He'd made breakfast, something he hadn't done since our honeymoon. Eggs Benedict with fresh orange juice and coffee, exactly how I liked it. There was even a small gift box next to my plate. "Open it," he urged, his excitement seemingly genuine. Inside was a silver bracelet with a compass charm. "So you'll always find your way back to me," he said, clasping it around my wrist. The irony of that statement haunts me now. After breakfast, he announced we were going on a day trip to Silver Falls, a waterfall about 2 hours into the Rocky Mountains. I'd mentioned wanting to see it months ago after seeing photos on Instagram. "You remembered," I said, genuinely touched. "I remember everything about you," he replied, but there was something strange in his tone. I wanted to call my sister Rachel to let her know we'd be gone for the day, but Marcus insisted we needed to leave immediately to beat the tourist crowds. "We can call her from the road," he said, already ushering me to the car. "I want today to be just about us, no distractions." The drive started pleasantly enough. Marcus had created a playlist of songs from our wedding, and we sang along as we wound through the mountain roads. He kept reaching over to hold my hand, telling me how beautiful I looked, how lucky he was to have me. About an hour into the drive, we stopped at a scenic overlook. Marcus insisted on taking photos, positioning me near the edge for the perfect shot. A few other cars were parked, their families taking pictures. Marcus seemed annoyed by their presence. "Let's find somewhere more private," he said, hurrying me back to the car. We stopped at 2 more overlooks, but each time there were people around. Marcus's mood was shifting. The loving husband act was cracking, replaced by intention I couldn't quite place. "Maybe we should just go to the falls," I suggested. "We're losing daylight." "You're right," he said, but his knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I tried to lighten the mood by reaching for my phone to play some music, but he quickly took it from me. "Let's stay disconnected today," he said, slipping my phone into his jacket pocket. "Just you and me and nature." The unease started, then a small knot in my stomach that grew with each mile. We turned off the main highway onto a Forest Service road. The trees grew denser, blocking out most of the afternoon sun. I hadn't seen another car for 20 minutes. "Are you sure this is the right way?" I asked. "Trust me." He said those 2 words that had once made me feel safe, now sending chills down my spine. Silver Falls was spectacular, but completely deserted when we arrived. The parking area was empty except for our car. The sound of rushing water echoed through the canyon. Marcus grabbed a backpack from the trunk, saying it had water and snacks for our hike. The trail to the top of the falls was steep and narrow. Marcus stayed behind me, saying he wanted to make sure I didn't slip. But it felt more like he was herding me forward from preventing any retreat. As we climbed, he began talking about life insurance of all things. "You know, I was thinking we should increase our coverage," he said casually. "You never know what could happen. Accidents occur all the time in places like this." "That's morbid anniversary talk." I tried to joke, but my voice came out shaky. "Just being practical," he said. "Did you know that falls are one of the leading causes of accidental death? People get too close to edges, lose their balance, and gravity does the rest." My heart was racing now, and not from the exertion of the climb. Every instinct was screaming danger. but I was trapped on a narrow trail with 1,000-foot drop on one side and my husband blocking the path behind me. When we reached the top, the view was breathtaking. The waterfall plunged over 200 feet into a pool below. The sound was deafening. We were completely alone. "It's beautiful," I said, staying well back from the edge. "Come closer, Chow," Marcus said, taking my arm. "You can't appreciate it from there." He guided me towards the observation point, a rock outcropping that jutted out over the falls. My legs were trembling. "Marcus, this is close enough," I said, trying to pull back. His grip tightened. "Don't you trust me on our anniversary?" He positioned me at the very edge, standing behind me with his hands on my shoulders. I could feel the mist from the falls on my face, see the dizzying drop below. "Perfect," he said. But he wasn't looking at the view. He was looking at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Cold, calculating, decided. "Marcus," I whispered. "You know, Gloria, I really did try to love you." He said, his voice conversational, as if we were discussing the weather. "But love doesn't pay debts. Love doesn't save my business. Love doesn't keep me alive." "What are you talking about?" I tried to turn, but his hands held me in place. "Did you really think I paid off those debts with your money? That was just the down payment. I owe 300,000 more. They gave me 1 month to pay, or I'm dead." Terror flooded through me. "We can figure this out together. We can sell the house, get a loan." "No," he said calmly. "We can't, but your life insurance can. $1 million for accidental death. Double indemnity. More than enough to pay my debts and start over." I couldn't breathe. This couldn't be happening. "Marcus, please." "This is all your fault, Gloria," he said, and I felt his hands shift on my back. "You made me do this. If you had just had more money, if your grandmother had left you more, I wouldn't have to do this. But you didn't, so here we are." "Marcus, no!" I screamed. But the sound was lost in the roar of the falls. "Goodbye, Gloria," he said. And then his hands pushed hard against my back. For a moment I was weightless, suspended in air with the mist around me like clouds. Time stretched impossibly long. I saw Marcus's face above me, already turning away, already walking back to the trail. He thought it was over. Then I was falling, and all I could think was that I didn't want to die. Not like this. Not by his hands. Not today. The fall lasted forever and an instant simultaneously. I had enough time to see the water rushing up to meet me, to try to position my body feet first, to take one last deep breath before impact. The water was so cold it felt like hitting concrete. The impact knocked every bit of air from my lungs. I plunged deep, the current immediately grabbing me, pulling me downstream away from the base of the falls. My body screamed in pain, but I was alive. Somehow, impossibly, I was alive. The cold water shocked every nerve in my body into hyper-awareness. My lungs burned for air as I fought against the current, struggling to reach the surface. When my head finally broke through, I gasped desperately, choking on water and spray from the falls. The current was relentless, slamming me against submerged rocks. Pain shot through my left ankle as it connected with something hard. I couldn't fight the water's power, so I let it carry me, using my remaining strength to keep my head above water and protect my body from the worst of the impacts. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, the river widened and the current slowed. I saw a cluster of rocks near the shore and used the last of my strength to grab onto them. My fingers were numb from the cold, barely able to grip the slippery surface, but desperation gave me strength I didn't know I had. I dragged myself onto a small, rocky beach, collapsing on the stones, coughing up water. My whole body shook violently from cold and shock, My ankle throbbed with each heartbeat. When I tried to stand, pain shot up my leg and I fell back down. It wasn't broken, I could move it, but it was badly twisted, already swelling. Looking back up at the falls, I could see the observation point where Marcus had pushed me. It seemed impossibly high. No one should survive that fall. But I had. Marcus was probably already hiking back to the car, constructing his story. His poor wife getting too close to the edge for a photo. Him turning away for just a moment. The tragic accident. The grieving widower. I could see it all playing out in my mind. But he'd made one mistake. He'd been so confident in his plan, so sure I would die, that he hadn't taken my smartwatch. It was waterproof, a birthday gift from Rachel last year. The screen was cracked, but still functioning. I activated the voice memo function with shaking fingers and began recording everything. The date, the time, what Marcus had said before, pushing me every detail I could remember. Evidence, proof. If I died out here from hypothermia, or my injuries at least, the truth would survive. The sun was starting to set, painting the canyon walls orange and red. I needed shelter. Behind the waterfall, I could see a dark space that might be a cave. It would be dangerous to try to reach it with my injured ankle, but staying exposed on the beach meant certain hypothermia once night fell. Using a large stick as a crutch, I slowly made my way along the rocky shore. Every step was agony, but I focused on my anger to push through the pain. Marcus had tried to kill me. He had looked me in the eyes on our anniversary and pushed me off a cliff. The rage burned hot enough to keep me moving. The cave behind the waterfall was small, but dry. I huddled against the back wall, trying to conserve body heat. My clothes were soaked through, making me colder, but I didn't dare remove them. I used my watch to send my location to emergency services, but the signal was too weak. The message showed as pending. I must have passed out at some point because I woke to complete darkness. My watch showed it was past midnight. My body had stopped shivering, which I knew was a bad sign. I forced myself to move to do jumping jacks, despite the pain in my ankle. Anything to generate heat. That's when I remembered something from my college outdoor club. There was another trail on the east side of the canyon used by maintenance crews to access the water flow equipment. It was longer but less steep than the tourist trail. If I could make it to the river's edge and follow it downstream, I might find it. I waited until dawn, knowing that trying to navigate in the dark with an injured ankle would be suicide. As soon as there was enough light to see, I began my journey. Using the walking stick, I picked my way along the riverbank. Every step was calculated careful. One wrong move and I'd be back in the water, and I didn't think I'd survive a second time. It took 3 hours to travel what was probably only a mile. My ankle had swollen to twice its normal size. I'd torn my jacket on rocks and branches. My hands were cut and bleeding from grabbing onto sharp stones. But then I saw it, a maintained trail with a wooden sign, "Maintenance access authorized personnel only." The trail was a blessing compared to the riverbank. It switched back and forth up the canyon wall, gaining elevation gradually. I had to rest every few minutes, my body pushed beyond exhaustion. But I kept going, motivated by the thought of Marcus returning home playing the grieving widower, possibly even celebrating his success. At the top of the trail, I found what I'd been hoping for, a ranger station. It was closed for the season, but there was an emergency phone box outside. With trembling fingers, I lifted the receiver. 911. What's your emergency? My name is Gloria Coleman. I said, my voice hoarse. My husband tried to kill me. He pushed me off Silver Falls. Please, I need help. The dispatcher's voice immediately became urgent. Ma'am, are you injured? What's your location? Ranger Station 7 East Maintenance Trail. My ankle is injured. I'm hypothermic. Please hurry. We're sending help immediately. Stay on the line with me. Within 20 minutes, I heard sirens. An ambulance and 2 police cars pulled up to the station. The EMTs wrapped me in thermal blankets and started an IV, while the police began asking questions. My husband, Marcus Coleman, I told them through chattering teeth. He pushed me at the falls, said it was for insurance money. I have a recording on my watch. Detective Sarah Martinez, a woman with kind eyes and silver streaking through her dark hair, took my watch carefully. We'll preserve this as evidence. Can you tell me exactly what happened? As the EMTs loaded me into the ambulance, I gave her the basic details. She nodded grimly. Your husband called 911 about 2 hours ago reporting that you'd fallen at Silver Falls. He's at the sheriff's office now, playing the distraught husband. He tried to kill me, I said again, needing them to believe me. I believe you, Detective Martinez said. His story has some holes. He waited 4 hours to report your fall, claiming he was searching for you, but his clothes were clean and dry when he arrived at the station. No mud, no tears, nothing to suggest he'd been scrambling around a riverbank looking for his wife. At the hospital, doctors confirmed my injuries were consistent with a fall and prolonged exposure. My ankle was severely sprained. I had mild hypothermia, multiple contusions, and a minor concussion. They kept me overnight for observation. Detective Martinez visited the next morning with surprising news. Your husband is putting on quite a performance, she said, crying on cue, demanding to know if we've found your body. He's already called your insurance company to inquire about the claim process. He's not going to get away with this, I said. No, she agreed. He's not. We've opened a formal investigation. The voice recording from your watch is clear evidence of attempted murder, but I want you to know this might get complicated. He's hired a lawyer, a good one. Rachel arrived that afternoon, having driven through the night from San Francisco. She took one look at me and burst into tears. I knew something was wrong, she said, holding my hand. When Marcus called to tell me about your accident, the way he said it so calm and matter-of-fact, no real emotion, I knew. She'd brought me clothes and my laptop from home. Marcus didn't know she had a spare key. He's already moving your things into storage, she said quietly. I saw him loading boxes when I went to get your stuff. He's not even pretending to hope you're alive. Detective Martinez suggested I stay with Rachel for safety once I was released. She also recommended I not let Marcus know I was alive just yet. Let him think his plan worked, she said. The more confident he feels, the more mistakes he'll make. 2 days later, I was released from the hospital. As we drove to Rachel's apartment, I saw a news van outside our house Marcus on the front steps, giving an interview the picture of a grieving husband. Even from a distance, I could see he was wearing a black armband. The sight filled me with a rage so pure it felt like fire. He'd already buried me in his mind, already counted the insurance money. But he'd forgotten one thing. I was my grandmother's granddaughter, and she'd raised me to be a fighter. Marcus was about to learn what that meant. Detective Martinez had assembled a thorough investigation team. 2 days after my release from the hospital, she called me to her office for a detailed interview. The small conference room was filled with evidence bags, photographs, and timeline charts, covering one entire wall. We've uncovered some disturbing information about your husband. She began sliding a folder across the table. This isn't his first attempt. My blood ran cold as I opened the file. Inside were photographs of 2 women. The first was labeled Lisa Chen, age 31. The second, Diana Patterson, age 29. Lisa was his girlfriend 4 years ago, Detective Martinez explained. She survived a suspicious boating accident where she was pushed overboard during a private sunset cruise. Marcus claimed she'd had too much wine and fell. She managed to swim to shore, but when she tried to press charges, she had no proof. They'd been alone on his boat. I studied Lisa's photo. She looked vibrant, successful, happy, like I had been. And Diana? I asked, though I already knew the answer wouldn't be good. Diana wasn't as fortunate. She died in a hiking accident 2 years ago, fell off a cliff in Aspen. Marcus was the only witness. He collected a $700,000 life insurance policy. My hands shook as I looked at Diana's photo. She had auburn hair and green eyes. She looked kind. "We need to contact Lisa," I said. "She needs to know she's not alone, and I need to hear her story." Detective Martinez had already found her. Lisa lived in Portland now, working as a veterinarian. When I called her, there was a long silence after I introduced myself. "I've been waiting for this call," she finally said. "When I saw the news about your accident, I knew he'd done it again." We met the next day, Lisa driving down from Portland. She was smaller than I'd expected, with an inner strength that radiated from her eyes. We sat in Rachel's living room, cups of tea growing cold as she told her story. "Marcus swept me off my feet," she began the words, eerily familiar. "Expensive dinners, surprise trips, constant flowers. He proposed after 4 months. I thought I was living a fairy tale. The pattern was identical. Joint bank accounts, selling her condo isolation from friends, the discovery of gambling debts. The boat trip was for our 6-month anniversary," she continued. "He'd been strange all day, checking his phone constantly, scanning the marina to make sure no one saw us leave. When we were far enough from shore, he started talking about insurance and accidents at sea." Her voice cracked. "When he pushed me, he said the exact same thing, that it was my fault that I'd made him do it. The water was so cold and the current was strong. But I grew up swimming competitively. I made it to shore after 2 hours in the water." "Why didn't the police believe you?" I asked. "No evidence," she said bitterly. "It was my word against his. He'd already called the Coast Guard, reporting me missing, playing the concerned boyfriend. When I showed up alive, he claimed I'd been drunk, that I'd fallen, and was now trying to blame him out of embarrassment." She pulled out her phone, showing me saved screenshots. "I've kept track of him. After we broke up, he moved from Portland to Denver, started fresh. Then Diana, and now you." Meanwhile, the financial investigation was revealing the true extent of Marcus's desperation. Detective Martinez had obtained warrants for his financial records. The gambling debts were just the tip of the iceberg. "He owes $300,000 to some very dangerous people," she explained. "They're connected to organized crime. He's been making minimum payments, but they've given him a final deadline. Pay in full by the end of the month or face consequences." His real estate business was a facade leveraged to the maximum, with properties hemorrhaging money. He'd been using investor funds to pay personal debts, a federal crime. The house in Cherry Creek wasn't paid off as he'd claimed. He'd taken out 3 mortgages on it, forging my signature on the latest one. "The $1 million life insurance policy on you was purchased 6 months ago," Detective Martinez continued. "Right after your wedding. He'd been planning this for months, Gloria." The scope of his deception was staggering, but it also gave us leverage. Rachel helped me find a lawyer, David Thompson, who specialized in both criminal and civil cases. He was a tall, serious man who took notes in precise handwriting as I told my story. "We're going to bury him," he said simply. "Criminal charges for attempted murder, civil suit for fraud, and we're going to recover every penny he stole from you." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. I would return home wearing a wire, pretending to have amnesia about the push. Marcus's ego would make him believe I'd blocked out the trauma. We'd record everything, let him incriminate himself further. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Detective Martinez asked. "You'll have to face him, pretend you don't remember him trying to kill you." "I'm ready," I said. "He took everything from me, my money, my friends, my sense of safety. But he made one mistake. He left me alive. The night before the confrontation, I couldn't sleep. Rachel sat with me, holding my hand. "You don't have to do this," she said. "They have enough evidence from your watch recording." "I need to," I told her. "I need to look him in the eyes and know that I'm the one bringing him down. For Diana, for Lisa, for myself." The next morning, I put on my wedding ring for the last time. The weight of it on my finger felt like a shackle. Detective Martinez fitted me with a wire, the tiny microphone hidden in my bra, the transmitter tucked into my waistband. "We'll be right outside," she assured me. "The moment you feel unsafe, say the word pineapple and we'll come in." Marcus had been staying at a hotel, playing the role of a man too grief-stricken to stay in our home. When I called him, his shock was genuine. "Gloria." "Oh my God. Gloria, you're alive. Where are you?" "I've been going crazy. The police said you fell, that you were probably—" "I'm okay," I said, keeping my voice weak and confused. "I woke up in the hospital. They said I've been there for days." "Marcus, I don't remember what happened. The last thing I remember is us driving to the falls." "Thank God," he said. And he actually sounded relieved. Not because I was alive, but because his victim couldn't remember. "I'm coming to get you right now." "No," I said quickly. "I'm home. Can you come here? I need to understand what happened." There was a pause. "Of course. I'll be right there." I sat in our living room, the space that had once felt like a sanctuary, now feeling like a crime scene. 20 minutes later, I heard his key in the lock. He walked in carrying flowers and champagne, already playing the devoted husband. "Gloria," he said, crossing to me quickly, pulling me into an embrace that made my skin crawl. "I thought I'd lost you." I let him hold me, counting the seconds until I could pull away without seeming suspicious. His cologne, which once seemed sophisticated, now smelled like deception. "Tell me what happened," I said, settling back on the couch. "The doctors said I fell." He sat beside me, taking my hands in his. His palms were sweaty. "It was terrible," he said, his voice cracking with fake emotion. "You wanted to get closer to the edge for a photo. I told you to be careful, but you said you'd be fine. I turned to get the camera from my backpack, and when I turned around, you were gone." Lies flowed from his mouth like water. He described searching for me, calling for help, the agony of not knowing. He was good, I had to give him that. If I didn't know the truth, I might have believed him. "I don't remember any of that," I said, touching my temple. "The doctors said traumatic amnesia is common with falls." "Don't try to remember," he said quickly. "The important thing is you're alive and safe now." He poured champagne, handing me a glass. I pretended to sip it, remembering what had happened to Diana, wondering if this was how he'd ultimately planned to finish the job. Marcus raised his champagne glass to mine, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. I noticed his hand trembling slightly, the only sign of his nervousness. "To second chances," he said, clinking his glass against mine. I brought the glass to my lips, but didn't drink, instead setting it down on the coffee table. "I'm still on pain medication. I probably shouldn't mix it with alcohol." A flash of frustration crossed his face before he smoothed it away. Of course, how thoughtless of me. He moved closer on the couch, his arms sliding around my shoulders. Every instinct screamed at me to pull away, but I forced myself to lean into him slightly, playing the role of the confused but trusting wife. "The police asked me so many questions," I said, making my voice small and uncertain. "They seemed to think they had these theories about what happened." His arm tensed. "What kind of theories?" "Crazy things. They asked about our marriage, about money, about insurance. I told them they were being ridiculous. You would never hurt me. Never, he agreed, quickly relaxing slightly. The Detective Martinez, she has it out for me. You know how they are always looking for someone to blame. Can't accept that accidents happen. She did seem very persistent, I said. She kept asking about our finances. I didn't know what to tell her. Marcus stood abruptly, pacing to the window. What did you tell her? Nothing. I said our finances were none of her business. Was that right? He turned back, his smile returning. Perfect. You're perfect. He returned to the couch, taking my hands again. Actually, about our finances, there's something I should tell you. Here it comes, I thought. The setup for his next attempt. With everything that's happened, I've been thinking about our future, he continued. Life is so fragile. We should make sure we're protected. I want to increase our life insurance. Make sure we're both taken care of if anything happens. That makes sense, I said, nodding slowly. How much were you thinking? Maybe another 1 million each, he suggested casually. And I was thinking maybe we should update our wills too. Leave everything to each other. It's what married couples do. Of course, I agreed. Should we do that tomorrow? His eagerness was barely contained. Why wait? I have the paperwork in my car. My lawyer drew it up while you were missing. I wanted everything in order in case the worst had happened. How convenient, I thought. He'd been preparing for my death, even as he pretended to search for me. Could you get it? I asked. I'm still pretty sore. He practically ran to his car. While he was gone, I quickly texted Detective Martinez. He's trying to get me to sign insurance papers. Her response was immediate. Keep going. We're recording everything. Marcus returned with a briefcase spreading papers across the coffee table. Insurance forms will update power of attorney documents, a complete transfer of everything I had left to him. This is a lot, I said, pretending to read through them. I know it seems overwhelming, but after almost losing you, I realized how unprepared we were. What if you died, and I couldn't even access money for your funeral? The casualness with which he mentioned my funeral made my stomach turn. Marcus, I said suddenly, can I ask you something? Anything? Were you having an affair? The question caught him off guard. What? No, why would you ask that? It's just, before the accident, things were different between us. You were distant, secretive. And that day at the falls, you kept checking your phone. His face darkened. I can't believe you're asking me this after everything I've been through. I thought you were dead, Gloria. Dead. And you're questioning my faithfulness. I'm sorry, I said quickly. I'm just confused. These gaps in my memory, they're making me paranoid. He softened immediately, pulling me close. It's okay. The trauma is affecting you. Once you sign these papers, we can put all this behind us and start fresh. Maybe take a trip somewhere warm. Somewhere with beaches instead of cliffs. The implied threat wasn't subtle. Actually, I said, pulling back slightly, I've been thinking about our anniversary trip. Maybe if we went back to Silver Falls, it might help me remember. His whole body went rigid. No, absolutely not. That place, I never want to see it again. But the doctors said returning to the trauma site might restore my memory. The doctors are wrong, he said sharply. Then catching himself, I just mean, why risk it? What if you remember the fear, the fall? It could traumatize you all over again. You're probably right, I conceded. I just hate not remembering. What if the memory comes back suddenly? What if I remember something that changes everything? He was studying my face now, searching for signs of deception. What could possibly change you fell? It was an accident. End of story. Is it? I asked, meeting his eyes directly. Is that really what happened, Marcus? The room went silent, except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. His hand moved to his pocket, where I could see the outline of something small and cylindrical. Another syringe. A weapon. What are you asking me, Gloria? I'm asking for the truth. Did I really fall, or did something else happen up there? His face transformed. Then the mask finally slipping completely. The loving husband disappeared, replaced by the cold, calculating man who'd pushed me off a cliff. You want the truth? He said, his voice low and dangerous. The truth is, you were supposed to die. You were supposed to hit those rocks at the bottom and solve all my problems. But somehow, impossibly, you survived. I forced myself not to react, not to show that I remembered everything. I don't understand, I whispered. Of course you don't. You never did. You walked around in your little bubble thinking everyone was good, everyone could be trusted. So naive. Even after I isolated you from that meddling friend Jennifer, even after I took control of your money, you still trusted me. He stood, looming over me. Do you know what it's like to owe money to people who break bones for missing payments? To have them threaten not just you, but everyone you care about? I didn't have a choice. You tried to kill me for money. Not tried, he corrected. I did kill you. You just refused to stay dead. But that can be fixed. He pulled his hand from his pocket, and I saw the syringe. Before he could move, I said loudly and clearly, Pineapple. Marcus has a syringe. His face contorted in confusion just as the front door burst open. Police officers flooded in, weapons drawn. Drop the syringe hands where we can see them. Marcus spun toward the door, then back to me, realization dawning on his face. You remembered, he said. You remembered everything. Every single second. I confirmed, standing up despite the pain in my ankle. Every word you said before you pushed me. Every lie you told after. Everything. He lunged at me, but the officers were faster. They tackled him to the ground, the syringe skittering across the hardwood floor. As they cuffed him, he screamed at me. This is your fault. You made me do this. If you'd just died like you were supposed to. Marcus Coleman. You're under arrest for attempted murder, fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder of a witness, Detective Martinez said, entering the room. You have the right to remain silent. But Marcus wasn't done. As they hauled him to his feet, he looked at me with pure hatred. You think you've won. You have no idea who I owe money to. They'll come for you. You're dead anyway. Actually, Detective Martinez said, those associates of yours were arrested this morning in a federal sting operation. Turns out you weren't their only victim. Your testimony will help put them away for life. The fight went out of him then. They led him out in cuffs. Neighbors gathered on their lawns to watch. The man who'd tried to murder me for money was finally facing justice. But as I stood in our living room surrounded by police and evidence markers, I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. The man I'd loved, married, trusted with my life had never existed. He'd been a character Marcus played to get my money. Detective Martinez approached me, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. You did great, Gloria. Your testimony, combined with the recording from today, will ensure he never hurts anyone again. What about Diana? I asked. Can you prove he killed her? We're reopening the case. With Lisa's testimony and yours establishing a pattern, we might be able to get justice for her too. As the crime scene team processed the syringe, they discovered it contained potassium chloride enough to cause cardiac arrest. Marcus had come prepared to finish what he'd started at the falls. Rachel arrived as the police were leaving, wrapping me in a fierce hug. "It's over," she said. "You're safe now." But it wasn't over. There was still the trial to face, still the long journey of rebuilding my life, still the nightmares that would wake me feeling like I was falling again. The trial began 3 months later in downtown Denver. The courthouse was a modern building of glass and stone, its steps crowded with reporters every morning as I arrived. The story had captured national attention. "Waterfall Widow Survives Murder Plot" was the headline that seemed to run everywhere. Marcus entered the courtroom in a suit I'd never seen before, his attorney having advised him to appear professional but humble. He'd lost weight in jail. His former confident swagger replaced by a calculated meekness that fooled no one who knew the truth. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Walsh, was methodical in presenting the case. She was a tall woman with copper hair pulled back in a severe bun, her voice carrying clearly through the courtroom as she laid out the evidence. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began in her opening statement, "this is not a case about a tragic accident. This is a case about greed, deception, and the cold-blooded attempted murder of a woman whose only crime was trusting the man she married." The evidence was overwhelming. They played my watch, recording my voice weak but clear, as I documented what Marcus had said before pushing me. Several jurors visibly recoiled when they heard Marcus's voice saying those chilling words about it being my fault. Lisa testified on the second day. She was composed and credible, detailing her own near-death experience with Marcus. His attorney, Richard Stone, tried to discredit her, suggesting she was a bitter ex-girlfriend seeking revenge, but Lisa remained calm. "I'm not here for revenge," she said, looking directly at Marcus. "I'm here so he can't do this to anyone else." Diana Patterson's parents testified next. Her mother Ellen broke down on the stand, describing how Marcus had cried at her daughter's funeral, how he'd comforted them, even as he was already spending the insurance money. "He looked me in the eyes and said Diana was the love of his life," Ellen said through tears. "But he killed her. I know it now. He killed my baby for money." The forensic accountant testified about Marcus's finances, revealing the full extent of his deception. He'd taken out loans, using my forged signature, maxed out credit cards in my name, even sold jewelry my grandmother had left me, replacing them with fakes. The gambling associates testified too, part of their plea deal with federal prosecutors. They described Marcus's desperation, his promises that he'd have the money soon, his mentions of his wife's insurance policy. Marcus's defense was weak. His attorney tried to argue that I'd fallen accidentally, that my trauma had created false memories. But the physical evidence contradicted this. The angle of my fall, the lack of any attempt to grab onto something, the position where I'd landed, all consistent with being pushed, not falling. When Marcus took the stand in his own defense, it was a disaster. His story changed multiple times. First, he claimed I'd jumped, then that I'd slipped, then that I'd been trying to take a selfie. The prosecutor tore him apart. "Mr. Coleman, you waited 4 hours to report your wife missing. Why?" "I was searching for her." "Yet your clothes were clean and dry when you arrived at the police station. How do you explain that?" I changed clothes." "Where your car was searched, no wet clothes were found." His lies compounded on each other. When confronted with the voice recording, he claimed it was edited, then that I'd misunderstood him, then finally that he'd been joking. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. When they filed back in, not one of them looked at Marcus. On the count of attempted murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty. The list went on. Guilty on all 12 counts. Marcus showed no emotion as the verdicts were read, but his mother, who'd attended every day of the trial, sobbed quietly in the back row. She'd approached me once during a recess, apologizing for her son, telling me she didn't raise him to be this way. I didn't know what to say to her. How do you comfort a mother whose son is a monster? At sentencing 2 weeks later, I gave my victim impact statement. I'd written and rewritten it dozens of times, trying to capture the devastation he'd caused, without giving him the satisfaction of seeing me broken. Marcus Coleman didn't just try to kill my body. I read my voice steady despite my shaking hands. He killed my ability to trust my sense of safety, my belief in love. He took my grandmother's inheritance meant to secure my future and used it to fund his deception. He isolated me from friends who tried to warn me. He made me doubt my own instincts until I couldn't recognize danger when it was sleeping beside me. I looked directly at him then. He was staring at the table, jaw clenched. But Marcus failed in his ultimate goal. I survived. I'm here telling my story, ensuring justice not just for me, but for Diana Patterson, who can't speak for herself, and for Lisa Chen, who was never believed until now. Your greed, Marcus, was your downfall, and my survival is my victory. The judge, an elderly man with silver hair and sharp eyes, sentenced Marcus to 25 years to life in prison. Consecutive sentences meant he wouldn't be eligible for parole for at least 20 years. As they led him away, Marcus turned to look at me one last time. There was no remorse in his eyes, only rage. He was still convinced this was my fault, that I'd somehow wronged him by surviving. The divorce was finalized immediately after the criminal trial. I recovered some of my money through civil suits, though much of it was gone, forever lost to his gambling and spending. The house in Cherry Creek was sold to pay off the fraudulent mortgages. I had enough left to start over, but not much more. I moved to Seattle, as far from Colorado as I could get, while staying on the West Coast. The constant rain was a comfort after the harsh sunshine of Denver. I found a small apartment in Capitol Hill with a view of the Sound and no balconies or high edges. Starting my design business again was harder than I expected. My name had been in the news for months. Some clients were supportive. Others treated me like a curiosity, wanting to hear about my near-death experience more than discuss their projects. Therapy helped. Dr. Patricia Wong specialized in trauma survivors. She was a small woman with gentle hands and an office full of plants, nothing like the sterile medical buildings I'd come to associate with recovery. Trauma rewires the brain, she explained during one of our early sessions. Your body is still in survival mode, waiting for the next threat. We need to teach it that you're safe now. It took months to sleep through the night without nightmares. Months more to stop checking locks obsessively or jumping at unexpected sounds. The sound of rushing water could send me into a panic attack. I couldn't watch movies with scenes of anyone falling. But slowly, incrementally, I healed. I joined a support group for domestic violence survivors. The other women understood in ways my well-meaning friends and family couldn't. We shared our stories, our triggers, our small victories. There was Martha, whose husband had poisoned her slowly with antifreeze in her coffee. She'd figured it out when she started going blind. And Jennifer, not my old friend, but another survivor whose boyfriend had cut her brake lines. She'd survived when her car hit a tree instead of going over the bridge he'd intended. We were all women who'd loved men who'd tried to kill us. It was a terrible sisterhood, but a powerful one. One day, about 9 months after the trial, I received an unexpected call. Ellen Patterson, Diana's mother. I wanted to thank you, she said. Because of your testimony, they're reopening Diana's case. The prosecutor thinks they can prove Marcus murdered her. I'm glad, I said, meaning it. Diana deserves justice. She would have liked you, Ellen said softly. You're both fighters. A year after the trial, I published a book about my experience, The Fall That Saved My Life, a survivor's story. It wasn't easy to write reliving every moment, but I wanted other women to recognize the signs I'd missed. The book became a bestseller, leading to speaking engagements at conferences about domestic violence and attempted murder by intimate partners. At one conference in Portland, Lisa was in the audience. We had dinner afterward, two survivors sharing a meal and something deeper, an understanding that needed no words. I dated someone last year, she told me. A nice guy, genuinely nice, but when he suggested a weekend trip to the mountains, I broke up with him. I understand, I said. And I did. Trust once shattered so completely was almost impossible to rebuild. 2 years after the fall that was meant to kill me, I stood in my Seattle office looking out at Elliott Bay. My design firm, Rising Phoenix Graphics, had just landed a major contract with a tech startup. I had 3 employees now, all women who'd faced their own challenges and come out stronger. We understood each other's need for security cameras, panic buttons discreetly installed under our desks, and a policy that no client meetings happened alone. My personal life had evolved slowly, carefully. I'd met Aaron at a book signing event at Elliott Bay Book Company. He was there to buy my book for his sister, who worked as a counselor for abuse survivors. Unlike Marcus's instant charm offensive, Aaron was quiet, respectful of boundaries, patient with my hesitations. Our first coffee date lasted 15 minutes. I'd been so anxious that I'd barely managed to drink my latte. Aaron had simply said, "Thank you for trying. Same time next week if you'd like. No pressure." It took 6 months before I could hold his hand without flinching. A year before I could spend the night at his apartment. He never pushed, never complained about the glacial pace. When I finally told him the full story of what Marcus had done, he'd listened without interrupting, then asked what he could do to help me feel safe. "I need you to know that I might never be able to go hiking with you," I'd said, "or stand near edges, or travel to certain places." "Then we won't do those things," he'd replied simply. "There are plenty of adventures to be had at sea level." The letter from Marcus arrived on a Tuesday morning, forwarded through my attorney. I'd gotten several over the past 2 years, all attempting manipulation from different angles. This one was different. "Gloria," it read. "I'm dying. Liver cancer, they say I have 3 months. I want you to know that I forgive you for what you did to me. Despite everything, I loved you once. Marcus." Even facing death, he couldn't accept responsibility. He forgave me. The absurdity of it might have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. I threw the letter in the fireplace and watched it burn, feeling nothing but a mild satisfaction as his words turned to ash. Lisa called that same week with unexpected news. "I'm getting married," she said, joy evident in her voice. "His name is David. He's a teacher, the kindest man I've ever met." "How?" I asked, genuinely curious. "How did you learn to trust again?" "Therapy. Time. And David was patient, so patient. He knows everything, and he stayed. Some days I still struggle, but most days are good now. Most days I don't think about Marcus at all." Her wedding was small, intimate, held in her parents' backyard in Portland. I was honored to be invited. Watching her walk down the aisle, radiant and confident, gave me hope that complete healing was possible. The next spring, Aaron proposed to me. Not with a grand gesture or public display, but quietly, privately over breakfast in my apartment. "I know you might not be ready yet," he said, "and I'll wait as long as you need. But I want you to know that I'm sure. You're my person, Gloria. Whatever that looks like for you. Whatever feels safe, that's what I want too." I said yes, but with conditions. A long engagement, separate bank accounts, a prenuptial agreement that protected both of us. Some might see these as unromantic, but Aaron understood they were necessities for my peace of mind. "Whatever makes you feel safe," he said, and meant it. Marcus died in prison 3 months after his letter alone, except for the prison chaplain. His mother asked if I would come to the funeral. I declined. That chapter of my life was closed, and I had no interest in reopening it, not even for closure. The third anniversary of my fall arrived on a crystalline September day. I'd made a decision weeks earlier, one that Dr. Wong supported. I was going back to Silver Falls, not alone, but with Aaron, Rachel, and surprisingly Jennifer, my old friend, who'd reached out after seeing my story on the news. The drive up felt surreal. The same winding roads, the same scenic overlooks where Marcus had stopped checking for witnesses. But this time the car was filled with laughter and support instead of hidden malice. At the parking area, I stood for a long moment, looking at the trail that led to the top. My body remembered the fear, the pain, but my mind was stronger now. "You don't have to do this," Rachel said, squeezing my hand. "I know. That's why I can." We hiked slowly, stopping frequently. Not because I was tired, but because I was reclaiming each step, each view. When we reached the top, the observation point where Marcus had pushed me, I felt surprisingly calm. I stood well back from the edge, but I could see the water below the rocks that should have killed me, the path the current had taken me on toward survival. "You're the strongest person I know," Jennifer said, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there when you needed me." "Marcus made sure of that," I said, forgiving her completely. "He was very good at what he did." Aaron stood beside me, solid and reassuring, not touching unless I initiated it. "What are you thinking?" "That Marcus was wrong," I said, my voice carrying over the sound of the falls. "He said this was all my fault, but the only thing I was guilty of was trusting someone who said they loved me. The guilt was always his, never mine." We didn't stay long. There was nothing for me at Silver Falls except proof of my survival. As we walked back down the trail, I felt lighter with each step. The place that was meant to be my grave had become instead a testament to my strength. That evening we held a celebration of life, not mourning what I'd lost, but celebrating what I'd survived. Lisa came down from Portland with David. Several women from my support group attended. Even Detective Martinez stopped by, now a friend rather than an investigator. "You've built something beautiful from something terrible," she said, looking around at the gathering of survivors and supporters. "That takes real courage." As the sun set over Seattle, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I stood on my apartment balcony, safely away from the edge, but no longer paralyzed by fear. The city spread out before me, full of possibilities I'd nearly been denied. Aaron joined me, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders against the evening chill. "Regrets?" he asked. "No," I said, and meant it. Everything that happened led me here. I wouldn't choose it, would never want anyone else to experience it, but I survived it. And that survival made me who I am now. "And who is that?" I thought for a moment. "Someone who knows her own strength, someone who trusts her instincts, someone who understands that real love doesn't isolate or control or manipulate. It supports and encourages and respects." "Someone amazing," he added. "Someone who survived," I corrected, then smiled. "But yes, maybe amazing too." The stars were coming out, barely visible against the city lights. Somewhere Marcus was gone, his schemes and manipulations ended forever. Diana had justice, Lisa had love, and I had a life I'd built from the ashes of attempted murder, stronger and more authentic than anything I'd had before. My grandmother used to say that the strongest steel goes through the hottest fire. I'd been through the fire, pushed off a cliff by someone who claimed to love me, and emerged not as a victim, but as a survivor. Every morning I wake up grateful for another day. Marcus tried to steal from me. Every night I go to bed knowing I'm safe, not because someone else protects me, but because I learned to protect myself. The waterfall that was meant to be my end became my beginning, and every year on my anniversary, I don't mourn the marriage that nearly killed me. Instead, I celebrate the day I learned to fly. Marcus pushed me off that cliff, expecting me to fall. What he never expected was that I would rise. Sometimes the worst moments in our lives become the catalysts for our greatest transformations. That push off the cliff wasn't meant to end my life. It was meant to hide his true nature. But in surviving, I discovered my own strength. The fall didn't break me, it broke the illusion. And sometimes that's exactly what we need to save ourselves. The water that should have been my grave became my baptism into a new life, one where I knew my worth, trusted my instincts, and never again ignored the red flags that wave in warning. Marcus thought he was ending my story that day at Silver Falls. Instead, he was just beginning it. Every year on my anniversary, I return to Silver Falls, not to remember the push, but to celebrate the moment I learned to fly. Thank you for listening to my story. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence or fears for their safety in a relationship, please reach out for help. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is available 24/7. You are not alone, and you deserve to be safe. I hope my story helps others recognize the warning signs I missed. Love bombing, isolation, financial control. These are not signs of love, but of danger. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. To those who are survivors like me, know that healing is possible. It's not linear, and it's not easy, but it's possible. You are stronger than you know, braver than you believe, and worthy of real love that doesn't come with conditions or control. What warning signs have you learned to recognize in your own relationships? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to help spread awareness. Share this with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes one story can save a life. Thank you for being here with me today. Stay safe. Trust yourself and remember you have the strength to survive anything. Until next time, this is Gloria reminding you that sometimes our worst falls teach us how to soar.